Parashah Message, in the wilderness, we're reminded of the arrangement of the tribes around the tabernacle and wondered at the shape of the cross, that this actually formed. And it spoke about how that we have become, along with Yeshua, the temple of Yahweh, of Yeshua. And about Yahweh counting the people because you are special to him, because we are special to him. He knows your name, he knows our name. We are engraved on the palms of his hand. It's in Jeremiah 49:16. And he knows where you live. How about that? I enjoyed the thought that to Yahweh we are not just a crowd, and we are as valuable to him as Adam was when he was the only one on earth. I'm glad that Elohim has put this kind of love in the hearts of parents and friends, that we can all feel special to each other. I can love my children equally, even though I have more than one. The encouragement that when we save one person, we save a whole generation, a whole world of people who are led on the right path. So this week's parashah, Naso, titled Take a Census or Accounting. The term used to take a head count of children of Israel actually means to lift up and to elevate. In the Hebrew it reads, Naso et Rosh, lift up the heads. It is a census for all those directly involved in God's service. The Levites, as ordained by the mouth of Yahweh and the hand of Moshe. Hence, the main theme of the parashah is purity in the camp. It continues on the theme, and is a reminder from Yahweh that, irrespective of our position and our role in life, everyone is important and of value. We love watching the movie, especially Sharon and I, we love watching it, and Stephen does too, he always flicks it on, called The Help. And in it, the main character, who has been a housemaid all her working life, teaches a young child in her care. And what does she teach her to say? You are kind. You are smart. You are important. In fact, she doesn't use the R. She says, you is kind. You is smart. You is important. If we don't learn anything else today, take that home with you. And look in the mirror each day when you aren't feeling so hot, when you aren't feeling so gorgeous, when you aren't feeling so handsome, when you aren't feeling just so good. Remind yourself. It's as simple as that, because Yeshua said, be as, don't be little children, but be as little children. Sometimes we overcomplicate things, and it needs to sometimes be reverted back to a little bit of simplicity. And on Shavuot, week of weeks, Pentecost, Yahweh reminds us that every person counts, every day counts, every component of creation counts, and we should be counting our blessings. That we were given the Torah and the Ruach HaKodesh, without which nothing would count. And I'm not even an accountant. but my daughters. As disciples of Yeshua, we are members of one body to be functioning in unity, undividedly careful to bring honour to Yahweh, our Lord and our King. And in Parashah Bamidbar, in the wilderness, we saw that originally Yahweh intended that the firstborn of every Jewish family was to perform the service to Yahweh on behalf of their family. Remember, they were protected by the blood over the doorpost, and therefore were to be dedicated to Yahweh. They lost this right when they took part in the sin of the golden calf. And Yahweh then dedicated for himself the Levites, the Kohathites, the Gershonites and the Merahites, who generationally were awaiting the consequences. This is interesting. We're awaiting the consequences of their forefathers' sin of murder, which his father should have meted out at the time, but failed to do so. That's why it's important for fathers to actually, if you see things in your children, you've got to deal with them. Otherwise, it won't be just for their lives that they'll muck things up. It will be their generations of lives that will be mucked up. And sometimes it's hard to being a parent, but sometimes it's hard being, dealing with people you love. But it's important that we actually do, in the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. Otherwise, their generations won't thank you for it. And as a result, they become not landowners. They become servants of the entire nation. What a cost. As I've mentioned before, God is, however, gracious to forgive, but there are sometimes resulting consequences which we have to live with. It then moves to ensuring, in the parasha, ensuring purity and holiness is actually maintained in the camp, providing regulations on dealing with a jealous husband and his supposedly wayward wife. Did you read it at home? And then we have the Nazarite vow. Now, I know it seems unfair, but jealousy actually started in the garden where Eve listened first to the Tanim, Satan. She listened to him first, rather than her helpmate. And that affected his ego. And it was a downhill slide from there, resulting in the overflow in Genesis 3, verse 16, that said, "Woman, they desire their husband, but often he will get the wrong end of the stick and misinterpret her actions or the lack thereof." It's interesting, isn't it? We'll talk about that a bit more later. Maybe. The word Nazir comes from the root Nitzah, which means to dedicate or to separate. Another word from the same root, Nazir, which means crown, consecration, or separation. And although we are called to bring holiness into the world in which we live, we're also required to be in the world, but not of its ways. Various rabbis, they believe that in the Messianic era there will be No need for separation from worldly matters, since they will no longer negatively impact us. Instead, since all will abound in peace and beauty, or single-minded focus will be to know a God, to love, to serve, and to worship him forever. And this will fulfill the holiness of the Nazarite vow. But another aspect of being set apart from the world actually lies in the importance of carrying each other's burdens. And in this way, you will actually then fulfill the law of the Messiah. That's in Galatians 6, verse 2. We aren't here to fulfill our own gratifications. We are here to meet the need of the body of Yeshua as a whole. I was talking to a young man just the other day about people growing up, entitled. Thank you. Sharon always knows my thoughts and words. Entitled. And that is a problem. Thinking that you're entitled. No, we're all entitled because of sin to hell. That's what our entitlement is. So everything that comes after is actually from the grace of God. We're blessed because of him. We have life, we have health, we have hope because of him. And it's an important thing that we remember. And it's foremost in our minds and our thoughts and our dealings. And it will change the way we respond to different ones and people. It's demonstrated when Yahweh instructs Moshe to specify the duties of each family in serving the community and him. In this way, the burden would be distributed so that it would not be too heavy for just a few people. Also, too often the weight of the service of Yahweh falls on a limited number of individuals willing to volunteer for the sake of the Kehillah, the community. This is not how the early Messianic community behaved. Believers had a communal lifestyle in which they helped one another and they shared all things in common. But that actually often falls down also to who is helping to lead the people as well, to encourage involvement, to encourage people to help and to step back and let things flow a bit more. And that's what we try to do. And we're continue to work on it. Because amongst body of believers, it's important that each one finds their place and each one is involved actively. Each one is able to participate in who they are. This concept of Kehillah often seems lacking in modern society. Many people today live in isolation and are concerned primarily with meeting their own needs and not those of the common good. I was talking to an older gentleman that we know, we'd known, who'd have liked to be living with a family, but it didn't suit. So he ended up in a rest home, as many do, and that's just the way our society and things are set up, and it doesn't always work out, and sometimes we just cannot deal with things, especially certain ailments that come along. Makes it difficult, and sometimes better handled in some of the homes, and they are good. They're a good invention, but it doesn't suit everyone either. Helping to carry out one another. Way of demonstrating our love for one another, and is the fulfillment of the laws of the Messiah. Galatians 6, was spoken before. We're called to fulfill the Torah of loving one another by helping bear each other's burdens. And Yeshua is an example to us in every aspect. He's always willing to bear our burdens. And this is a source of comfort when people let us down or they fail to do their part and they leave us carrying more than our fair share of the load. In Matthew 11 it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." So it's a two-way thing. He will provide that rest. But you and I have to ensure that because we have 100% confidence that he will provide it, we have to let go. But often we like to hang on, don't we? We like to hang on to different things because only I can do it best. But that's not the way God sets things up. We sometimes just need to let go and let God. There was another aspect of carrying one another's burdens, and that was protecting each other's back by thinking the best of each other and not jumping to conclusions without evidence of proof in accordance with the Torah. Yes, Yeshua was very clear about issues like adultery, divorce, homosexuality, gluttony, and the requirement of sexual purity in the camp, and etc. And you can read what he says about them. But more importantly, is that he's equally interested in the justice and the treatment, and the treating of people right with dignity and respect. Because in Bamidbar, we learn that Yahweh sees us as people, not numbers. And everyone counts. Is that how you see people? As people who need love, irrespective of how rotten they are. Interesting. Remember Yeshua's encounter with a woman caught in adultery, thrust upon him by some Torah scholars, well-meaning Torah scholars, but I'm not too sure how well-meaning they were. But in Pharisees, they're trying to entrap him. Firstly, where was her husband? Secondly, she had been given a fair. She should have been given a fair hearing before the priest, not the public kangaroo court. Who was there to look after her interests? In this situation, Yeshua knew what hypocrites they were. Only a person who had no guilt in this area of sin could actually bring an accusation. They all walked away when Yeshua was writing the law of the Torah and their names in the dirt, as per Jeremiah 7. Yahweh searched the heart. And all who forsake you will be ashamed, and those who depart from you will be written in the dirt, for they have forsaken me. Yeshua raised the woman's head above the crowd and just told her, go and sin no more. Well, I'm sure most wives today sigh with relief when they hear, husbands, love your wives, just as the Messiah loved his community and gave himself for her. He who loves his wife loves himself, Ephesians 5. Well, this situation that Yeshua had to deal with wasn't just random, as neither were many parables used to explain the principles of the kingdom. It was line upon line, precept upon precept, building a picture and a lifestyle. The principles related here were based on the Torah, including Bamidbar 5, purity in the camp. And guess what? Parables, they weren't a new method to Yeshua of getting his principles across. Verse 11, Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, suppose some man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful. Using the parable. He then goes on to explain and prescribe how to address it and how to resolve it either way. And there's actually no record even in the Mishnah or in the writings, of that particular thing actually having occurred, where she had to drink the thing. There's no record of it. It's interesting, isn't it? But it was used to show people how to be careful in their relationships. Of course, Yeshua said, my standard's a bit higher than that. And that's requirement is to don't even think it. Don't even think it. Never mind doing it, don't even think it. Wow, that's a pretty high standard, isn't it? Wow. And the various different things he talked about, says this sounds very much like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Amos and God's dealings with the unfaithfulness of his beloved chosen people, Israel. But actually this foundation goes further back than Bamidbar. And there are key words in the Hebrew which point to this. The law of Sotah deals with the wayward woman who is subject to adultery, trespassed him. Remember this phrase, which is actually the result of a marriage in crisis and on rocks. The husband is jealous, and in the words of the text, probably paranoid, possibly justified. It's almost more on rocks because of the mutual suspicion and scorn than it is on the rocks by whatever might or might not have happened with this imagined or possibly imagined affair. The Torah seems to be creating the situation where if she wants, she can create a reset in the marriage. There's a ceremony that will be either exonerate her or implicate her. And it's an interesting, even almost bizarre thing. It says, if she's in fact guilty of and nothing going on, then she'll survive the counter, but be guaranteed by God that if she's childless, she'll become pregnant. So that's an interesting one, that there is a blessing, that silver lining that comes out of it. But it is an interesting one because it's almost like there's a stigma that will remain with it. But there is a blessing that would come out of it. So remember, that's why in that period it was actually used to explain some other things. Because remember, in that period, there are many women in the Bible who did suffer from barrenness, and they needed the promise that God was looking at after their needs and would actually see them through, and that they would then be able to become pregnant. Even today, sadly, extended families express this problem. The words of the Sotah, the language here is of trespass or ma'al. There's an earlier story that seems to involve all these elements and more. What other story involves the water? What other story involves the erasure of something in the water? What other story involves the dirt getting erased and the muddied in the water? What other story also has the word ma'al associated with the erasure of these waters, with all the dirt and all that? From the erasure to remembrance and renewal comes redemption. It's actually the story of the flood in Bereshit. I think we have some of these common links there. The erasure is obviously the erasure of humanity. And everyone except for Noah and his family, they actually get erased. All the dirt as well. The land too gets mixed in with the water in the flood. It grabs all the land. The happening in the actual words, the words of erasure, that specific Hebrew word that describes the erasure of God's name into the waters, Mecha, Hechet, Meshet. I will erase man, that I created from the face of the earth. And the text could have chosen any other words, like I'm going to kill the man, I'm going to destroy man, but no, I'm going to erase man. Man comes from the earth itself. Bereshit talks about, it says, afar, dust out of man is formed. And what he's supposed to put in the sitar's drink? Afar, dust. From the ground. And you're supposed to erase that in the waters too, just like the flood. When man that originally came from afar was erased in the waters, it's like man went back to the dirt. It's almost like it's a recreation of the flood waters I was talking about. It says, I will erase man who created, Beth-El, from the face of the earth. But what are the laws of Satat really about? Take a look at the type of offerings. The offerings of jealousy, memorial, or seron, remembrance. In some way, that's Numbers 5. And as if the deeds of the woman are going to be remembered for ill or for good. If she's innocent, that's going to be remembered. She'll be exonerated. If she's guilty, that will be remembered. So there's a kind of judgment involving remembrance. It's interesting, a spirit of jealousy or feeling passed over. The ruach is in the wind, it talks about. So what does the wind passing over you remind of the flood? That's like the ending of the flood itself. What is the beginning of the Sotah is? It's the end of the flood. And the beginning of Sotah is the feeling of jealousy that triggers all this. The end of the flood is what? Take a look at the beginning of Genesis 8. And God remembers Noah, it says. What happened when God remembered Noah? God made this ruach, this wind, pass over the earth. The end of the flood. You have another kind of remembrance, which is actually life-saving. He remembered. But because the remembrance of the Sotah in some ways is meant to sort the first step in the preparation of a relationship. This is where hope of the reset actually comes in. And if a man actually can put paranoia and jealousy behind him on his side, and the woman can actually put the scorn and the anger and retribution behind her, on her side, then there is hope. Putting back the love that seeped out. God remembers Noah and causes a wind to blow upon the waters to begin the restoration of the world. He removes the cursed waters when destroying man and blessed them to have children and populate the world. Well, just like the Sotah, the exonerated Sotah is blessed with children as part of the reparation of the relationship. So the story of Noah is all about a relationship that is in disarray and needs repair. It's the relationship between humanity and God. God is looking at the people of the world asking, what is with these people? For goodness sake, I created them. I was happy with them. But look what they're doing to each other. Man's become evil. And the imagination of man's thoughts in his heart are only evil. Does that sound a lot like the accusation of a jealous husband or an angry husband? Yeah. It's all tied up with the inclination of one's heart. On the one hand, God says he's never again going to destroy the world. The inclination of man is bad from his youth, and that man is bad. The man will determine who he wants to be. Never again, though, will I destroy him. It's almost like what God is doing is sort of giving him this reassurance that, yes, I know you're evil. And then you have Noah saying, look, what do you know? If it happens once, it could happen again. How do you know people will never change, get bad again? You're telling me to have all these children? What if I decide to destroy them again? And God says, no. I'm not going to do that because I'm actually looking at the reason why I destroyed you, and never again will I destroy for that reason. The Torah doesn't let us peer into the future or peer into people's hearts. It doesn't let us peer into the past to divine what was, except for the waters of Sita. It gives a relationship a chance at rebirth, a chance of repairing. That was the very powerful redeeming thing. Our God is a God of the second chance, and he wants us to afford that to each other. Our God is a God of the second chance, and he wants us to learn from him. And the only certainty for success is letting God be fully in charge of your life, and that's through giving your life fully to Yeshua and understanding what he's done, which was total, irrespective of him knowing that we weren't going to always continue to walk in that knowledge, and will need to be always reminded. That's how forgiving God is. How forgiving are we? How forgiving do you want to be? That's our challenge. And that is associated with holiness. This whole set of parashahs talks about holiness. And actually we talk a lot about holiness, but are we acting on it? Or are we picking and choosing what we want to learn or apply? We then had the benediction, went through. It says, the prayer of the righteous person is powerful and effective. That's James 5, verse 6. The 3 lines of the priestly benediction each actually invoke a different aspect of God's blessing. The first requests God to bless and keep us. Messiah Yeshua has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in the Messiah, Ephesians 1:3. And though the Messiah Yeshua and the blessing of Avram has come upon the Gentiles, and we will experience the fullness of the blessing of the Messiah. That's in Romans 15:29. The Messiah Yeshua, God is able to keep you from stumbling and present you blameless before the presence of his glory with joy. That's in Jude 24, verse 25. So that's the first part. And the second part of the blessing says, Yahweh make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. When did grace start? From Adam. Grace started from Adam. And one of the biggest things was the grace that God placed right from Adam. was he stopped Adam and Eve eating from the tree of, why? Otherwise they would forever, for eternity, be stuck on the path to hell with no redemption. So he had to stop them from eating that from the tree of life. Amazing, isn't it? Didn't want to, but he had to. Because he wanted to bring redemption to man right from that point. Did take a bit of a while. Took a few thousand years. But it did happen. The second part of his grace is the expression of his grace. Graciousness is the expression of his grace. Messiah Yeshua is the fulfillment of this request as well. The gift of God's grace coming through the redemption of himself. Romans says he predestined us for adoption as sons through Messiah Yeshua to the glorious, great praise of his grace. In him we have redemption through his blood, the removal of trespasses, to keeping with the riches of his grace, which he lavished on us, Ephesians 1. And the third part of the blessing says, Adonai turn his face towards you and grant you shalom. And this implies the smile of Yahweh upon you. Messiah fulfills the request of shalom, says we have shalom with Yahweh through Elohim, through our Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. Romans 51. And he told his disciples, peace I leave with you, peace I give to you, but not as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let them be afraid. Let the shalom of the Messiah rule in your hearts. Colossians 3. And the shalom of Elohim, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds and in Messiah Yeshua, Philippians 4. This peace will cover the whole earth in the Messianic era. And of the increase of his government and the shalom, there will be no end. And on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it through justice and righteousness from now until evermore. That's in Isaiah 9. If you haven't experienced this and don't have the certainty of peace that Yeshua actually provides, you need to ask him into your life. You need to count the cost of doing so and then asking him to take over your life. It says if we confess with our mouth that Yeshua is the Lord and believe in our hearts that Abba Elohim raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. It's in Romans 19. And at the beginning of the parashah, we said that the main theme, and all those things that lead it, talk about the purity in the camp. A lot of things for purity in the camp. The counting up of the Omer is actually all about this. Preparing ourselves for communion with Yahweh. And it's all by faith, by trust, not of our own works, lest we boast. Righteousness was imputed to Avram through trust only, and even before he was circumcised. For his chosen people Israel, righteousness was imputed to them only as they trusted Yahweh, being obedient to Torah, and sacrifices were only there for holiness. They weren't for righteousness. Righteousness only came from them trusting in faith. That's why he stated in Jeremiah and Isaiah that the Torah needed to be written on people's hearts. It's beautiful that this parashah corresponds with the final preparation for Shavuot. Thanksgiving for all that he has done. Traditionally, we're reminded that it's the day that Yahweh gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, where Yahweh stated in a loud voice that he was coming down to meet with them. Interestingly, in Acts 2, there was a great wind and a fire. And Hebraically, they refer to the breath of Yahweh. And traditionally, it's also accepted that this has its root beginning on the same day as the Tower of Babel got confusion. They were together in one accord, it says, and they had one same language. And Babel was, however, about unity for man's glory, striving to reach up to the heavens, their own righteousness. They wanted union. And most people around the world, even the EU and everyone, they want union. No freedom. And guess what? It results in confusion. They need to read the scriptures. And then they wouldn't go down this crazy path. Interesting, Sinai, Mount Sinai. It provided unity of a nation with different tribes, but one goal, guided by a set of ways to bring holiness and dwelling together through the giving of the Torah. And then Acts, it actually had man coming together to wait for the outpouring of the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, resulting in unity with union. Well, no. Resulted in unity with variety. Multiple languages. Lashon, the tongue. Where Yahweh came down to man, giving man true freedom. Shavuot, Pentecost, is the undoing of Babel. Wow. Releasing the power of the tongue for good, for holiness, for purity in the camp. And that's why it talks so much about controlling this. Zip if it's not needed, and open it if you've got something good to say. That's why being filled with the Ruach equates to speaking in other Lashon, languages, tongues, resulting in the fruit of the Spirit. And as I say often, if there's no evidence coming out of grace, then you have not received God's grace. Likewise, if there is no fruit from the Spirit, then it's doubtful you are filled with the Spirit. Because they go hand in hand. No evidence of that, then it's just clanging cymbals. So let our lives reflect all that Yahweh intended for us, so that the world will see and enjoy who he really is. Shabbat Shalom. Nice little crackle.
finally sing how great he is.
Come. יברך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו עליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו עליך וישים לך shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. אבא, אנחנו מודים לך עבור השבת הזה, החג הזה. תודה שאתה נתן לנו עוד צ'אנס כדי ללמוד מי אתה. And Father, we just thank you for the Sabbath. We thank you for this holiday, for this feast day, Father, and just another day of us getting to learn who you are, Father.
Yeah.
We give you all the glory in your most holy name, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.